point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 570th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. As you can see, Tom is not here. He hasn't been here for a long time. He's not going to be with us for today. And the issue is, in fact, that he's having trouble getting his sleep on a reasonable schedule. And the result of that is that he's always groggy when we when we call him for the show. We did call him today. He sounded like he was fine, but you know he's just having trouble preparing and so forth. This show is based on it's an aggregation of news that I put up at my website, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. And if you want to take a look at the articles that I am talking about here, you can go to that website, or you can, if you're watching this on a computer, you can go down on the screen, scroll down below, and there's a couple of links down there that will take you to, in one case, a website that has the articles that I'm going to be talking about. The other case is a link to download the week's material at that website. In both cases, you get just the stories I'm going to be talking about with pictures. So they are below on the screen. You can look for them. The site again is geoharvey, geoharvey.com. And we're starting on the 18th of April, and we will go up to the 24th of April. This is being recorded on the 25th, so we go up to yesterday because there isn't really time to get everything together. So I'll start with a picture of Cook Inlet. And I've got to find my cursor. There we go. This is a picture of Cook Inlet in Alaska. The picture is from NREL, National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Levi Kilcher at that organization. The story is also from NREL. The title is Alaska's Wind, Wave, and Tidal Resources Could Help the State Meet Future Energy Needs. A 131-page report by 11 researchers in 8 different areas recommends the Alaska office of BOEM, which is the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, assess the potential for ocean energy. Alaska's outer continental shelf holds the potential to generate 3,800 gigawatts of electricity from wind, wave, and tidal resources. Now, if Tom were with us for this show, it would be, what is a gigawatt? A gigawatt is a bigawatt, baby. This is 3,800 gigawatts. The United States uses something on the order of 1,200 gigawatts, less than a third of this amount. And since electricity is more than a third of our national energy use, this amount that could be generated from as renewable energy from waters off the coast of Alaska should be enough if it were put together and to do this, which it will not be because the technical issues would be, there are better ways to do things. But it would be enough to provide the United States with all of its energy needs. So that picture, by the way, I'll put it back up again, you will see that kind of on what would be the horizon if they didn't have the mountains in the background, you can see all the way to the right, there's a thing in the water. And a little bit to the left of the middle, there is another thing like it in the water. And in fact, though they're hard to see, there are 3 others. Those, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that those are oil rigs in Cook Inlet. There is oil in Cook Inlet. Okay, I'm going to move along. We have a picture of a Nissan Formula E racer. This article is from Clean Technica, and the title is Nissan teases all solid-state EV battery for itself, Renault, and Mitsubishi Motors. Nissan hasn't been saying what goes into the solid-state battery it is developing, but it did give some details. It listed a reduction in charging time to 1/3, while bringing the cost of the battery packs down to $75 per kilowatt hour by 2028, with an ultimate goal of $65. And I should, every time we talk about these, I shouldn't say that because sometimes we don't, but when I talk about the price per kilowatt hour of a battery, I always bring this up, or try always to bring it up. $75 per kilowatt hour sounds like a lot because you can get electricity from a wall socket for 20 cents per kilowatt hour here in Vermont, roughly. But this is kind of like comparing the price of water with the price of the truck that hauls the water. The battery holds the electricity. It isn't electricity. So you're pricing two entirely different things. And $75 per kilowatt hour is a price that's low enough that it should be disruptive. At that price, it is going to be so cheap compared to gasoline that it just doesn't make sense to use gasoline. Okay, we're up to an article from Renews. This is a picture of renewable energy hybrid, and the source of this is Fred Olson Renewables. And the title of this article is Fred Olson Renewables Files Plans for Scottish Hybrid. Fred Olson Renewables submitted proposals for a 100 megawatt hybrid renewable energy project to the Scottish government. Lees Hill Renewable Energy Park would consist of wind, solar, and battery storage in the Scottish borders. The developer offered over £7 million in community benefit funding, that is, funding that would go to the communities in that area. So anyway, we're up to Friday, April 19th, and we have an article from PV Magazine International. There is a picture of a town called Thimphu, which is in Bhutan. The title is EIB lends 150 million euros for renewables in Bhutan. The European Investment Bank agreed to lend 150 million euros, which is a little bit over $160 million for renewables in Bhutan to fund solar power along with small to medium-sized run-of-river hydro plants, especially in remote areas. Bhutan is one of only 3 net carbon negative countries in the world. So Bhutan is drawing down more carbon dioxide now than it emits. And helping it along with this, it is also one of 7 countries in the world that are nearly 100%, 99 point something percent of their energy comes from renewable sources. And it's the only one that are in both of those groups. I should point out what a run-of-river hydro plant is. A run-of-river hydro plant uses no dam. It might use a weir. A weir looks kind of like a dam, but it isn't. And the difference between a weir and a dam is that the weir is low enough with water flowing over the top of it, which is how it works. A fish can swim upstream past the weir without any fish ladder or anything like that. A run-of-river hydro system will take water from a higher location and deliver it to a lower location. The difference is going to be just feet. We could have a thing like that in the Whetstone Brook over a range of maybe a mile or two. You could take water from above a mile or two upstream from the co-op and then direct it down to the Connecticut River and take advantage of that. It would not produce a lot of electricity, but it can be done. And what they're doing in Bhutan is in the Himalayas. It's just to the east of Nepal, and it's all mountains. So of course, all you've got to do is go from higher mountains to lower. By the way, the other countries that are 100% or nearly 100% renewable energy include Nepal, and they also include Albania, Iceland, Paraguay, and two countries in Africa. Maybe it's two countries in Africa, and I forget which ones they are. Anyway, so that is that. I'm going to go on to the next story. The next story has a picture of the skyline. Obviously, there's an island between us and that skyline. That skyline is a city called Gold Coast, which is in Queensland in Australia. This is from PV Magazine Australia, and the title of the article is Queensland locks 80% renewable energy by 2035 target into law. The Queensland government has passed laws locking 80% renewable energy generation by 2035, a move it expects will create more than 100,000 new jobs in manufacturing, renewable energy generation, power transmission, and industries of the future. We don't know what they are, but they could be manufacturing solar panels. They could be manufacturing shoes. I just don't know. And this is a story that we will get back to. This is a big move. 80% renewable energy by 2035. They've got just over 10 years to get this, get up to 80% renewable energy. Queensland was the laggard, I think, of the Australian states when it came to solar, to renewable energy only a few years ago. So this is a very big turnaround for them. And we will see how it comes out. Okay, the next picture is a picture of a little girl drinking what appears to be orange juice out of a big bottle. This is from ABC News, which is American Broadcast Company. And the title is ER visits for heat illness rose in 2023 amid record-breaking temperatures, according to the CDC. An ER visit, of course, is an emergency room visit at a hospital. Heat-related ER visits increased in 2023 in the United States compared to previous years. Between January 1st and December 31st, 2023, there were 119,605 ER visits for heat-related illnesses, according to a report by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. So this increase, I don't know. I think a lot of this was probably as a result of increased heat, which would have been as a result of climate change, possibly. It might be that people are starting to pay more attention to the symptoms that happen when people get into trouble from heat. And heat can kill a person really quickly once you get into heat stroke. We are up to Saturday, April 20th, and we have a picture now of a young woman. And believe me, I don't know how old this woman is. I could find out easily enough. but she's more than 10 years younger than I am. That makes her young. I'm 77. I'm sure she's not as old as 67. She might be 50. I don't know. She might be 40. I don't know. This is from Yahoo News Canada. The woman is Claudia Sheinbaum, and the title is Mexican presidential frontrunner would focus on water and renewable energy. Mexican presidential candidate Claudia Sheinbaum, that woman is running for president of Mexico, and by the way, strongly favored to win that job, said that if she is elected, her administration will focus on water management, that's important, and renewable energy as part of a plan to boost the country's sustainability. She is strongly favored to win the elections, which are in June. And I looked into her. It kind of is a surprise to me. It's not surprising that somebody named Sheinbaum would be Jewish. I kind of expect, I don't know for sure, that Sheinbaum might mean something like mock tree. I'm not sure what that would mean. There's probably something in Jewish culture that would make sense out of that. Her name is obviously from Yiddish because instead of German, because Schein is spelled S-H-E-I-N, where in German it would be S-C-H-E-I-N. She is, as I recall, she has ancestors who are Ashkenazi, and she has ancestors who are Sephardic. And she, of course, is Mexican. So there you see her, kind of an unusual looking presidential candidate. You know, things are not what they were 100 years ago. 100 years ago, she would have been a Mexican man with a sombrero and people would have been shooting at her because that's the way things were. You know, there was a lot of rebellion going on in Mexico, and now Mexico is a different place. Interesting how things develop. Okay, our next article is from Clean Technica, and this is a picture of a Chevy Silverado electric vehicle. And the title is GM picks up the electric pickup truck torch dropped by Cybertruck. When you have a powerful electric pickup truck, do you really need to shell out for a home energy storage system as well? The launch began earlier this week with a focus on the new Chevy Silverado electric pickup truck and its bidirectional charging capability. This truck, if the power goes out, this truck has the connections that would be needed to keep things in your house going, so that if you had one of these trucks, you could, for example, plug your refrigerator, some of your lights, maybe a radio or television and so forth into it, to keep things going. You could plug in a heating system if the heating system is not too great a draw. And it's interesting that Chevy would be bringing this out. The Cybertruck is the Tesla vehicle, and the Cybertruck is not. It was later coming to market than people had hoped. As I understand it now, they are producing about 1,000 Cybertrucks per week, and that being the case, that's a respectable number of vehicles for a lot of vehicles. I don't know how many Chevy Silverados are expected in a week, but you know, we can guess that it would be. That it might be more than 1,000. So we will go on to our next story. This is a picture of a Texas wind farm. The story is from Green Tech Lead, and the title is RTX Partners with Engie for Renewable Electricity in Texas Facilities. RTX has announced an agreement with Engie North America to power 12 of RTX's facilities in Texas with 100% renewable electricity. This deal is RTX's largest renewable energy procurement to date, nearly doubling the company's use of renewable electricity. I have forgotten what RTX is. I should remember that. I just don't. It's gone out of my mind. I knew what it was a half hour ago. I don't know what it is now. Anyway, we are up to Sunday, April 21st, and we have a story from ABC News. ABC News is American Broadcast Company. When I say that we have something from ABC, that indicates the Australian Broadcast Company. Anyway, the title of this is Data Centers Fuel AI and Crypto, but could threaten climate, experts say. Okay, artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency take a lot of power. At complexes which typically span 100,000 square feet, the increased energy usage could jeopardize the fight to reduce carbon emissions and address climate change, experts told ABC News. I find this, I'm sorry I didn't put that picture up. This is a picture of a data center. And data centers and cryptocurrency sites are very similar. They're just full of boxes full of computers. They don't look alike because in the cryptocurrency sites, the computers are just one after another. And in this, it looks like that box in the middle has got 8 or so computers on the left side of it, but I might be seeing that wrong. The thing that has me a little bit bothered about this is that years ago, I applied for a patent, and the patent was granted on what I called artificial cognition, which is a computer's ability to understand a concept. And this was a data storage format. And ultimately, I brought that to a point where the data was a 128-bit item with a 128-bit mask so that the computer could be told which bits in that 128 bits were significant at all. The ones that were masked out had no significance, whatever. And the reason why this bothers me is because if I had a processor that had 128-bit registers and the mask registers with them, and I had loaded 3 of those registers so that one of them had a bit pattern that meant automobile, and the second one had a bit pattern that meant small passenger plane, I could load something, let's say ambulance, into another register, and I could say, okay, as a car is, an automobile is to a small passenger plane, I get the difference. I integrate that difference into an ambulance, and it will give me a result that fills the analogy. And it is, as a car is to a small passenger plane, so is an ambulance to an air ambulance. And in that processor, 128 bits, it would take 2 clock cycles to do that, which would mean that you could do that a couple of billion times a second. And I wonder, if you were using the neural net paradigm for artificial intelligence, would it be able to do anything that quickly? And I doubt very much that it could. My patent issued, but nobody wanted it. Too bad. It's something that's thrown down the drain. It's not the worst I've heard of. My brother invented a system that would take polluted water, polluted with biological pathogens, and filter it, and they actually took water from the Ganges River. This is the government of Bangladesh, took water from the Ganges River and put it through one of these filters, and what they got out as a result was tested, and it had no bacteria. It had a bacteria content of 0. This was tested by the United Nations. Is anybody interested in making them? No. Why? Because you can't make money making these if you're a big business. You could make money as a small, potter in a village, but not a big company. And I think there's something wrong with that. I'm not pursuing AI anymore, by the way. Anyway, we have now a picture of Queensland. This is a wind farm in Queensland. Actual there. You can see how big those wind turbines are because some of them are near trees, and these are full-size trees. I think a lot of them. Anyway, this is from ABC, which is the Australian broadcast company, and the title is "Queensland looks to cut emissions by 75% in a decade in rare show of bipartisanship." This is the same story we were talking about of Queensland setting up targets for 2035, except here we're stressing the fact that that was done in a way that was bipartisan. In the United States and in other countries, the opposition of one party to another has become toxic. And here in Queensland, we're seeing a little bit of this in the United States. They have got a little bit past what is toxic. Let me read the synopsis. Queensland is looking to harness its power as the sunshine state for something more than the skin cancer capital of the world. Cutting emissions by 75% by 2035, we're back to that same date, 2035, and a renewable energy target of 80% by 2035 have been enshrined in law in a bipartisan vote. So this is a vote that is of both the Labor Party and what is called the coalition, which is a combination of what is called the Liberal Party, although in the United States it would be called a conservative party, along with a national party, which is kind of nationalist. So we could hope that, political parties are going to calm down. We'll just see how that works. Okay, we have a picture coming up of what it looks like. This is a map of the Pacific. And these are El Niño temperature anomalies. Obviously, the red temperature anomalies are temperatures warmer than normal. The blue ones are temperatures colder than normal. This is from Live Science. The title is Uncharted Territory. El Niño to flip to La Niña in what could be the hottest year on record. El Niño is likely to give way soon, a NOAA scientist said. For the U.S., this is a climatological flip-flop that will likely mean a greater risk of major hurricanes in the Atlantic, that's this year, as well as areas of drier than usual weather in southern portions of this country. Now, what normally happens is you come off of an El Niño and you don't go straight into a La Niña. What normally happens is the El Niño kind of calms down, things get normal, and there you are, and you're normal for a little while. Here, it's going straight from one to the other, and that is not necessarily good news. So we'll just have to see what that does. Okay, we're up to Monday, April 22nd. We have an article from PV Magazine International and a picture of a solar farm. This picture is from Energy Co. And again, we're dealing with Australia. Australia is in the news a lot because Australia has these opposing energy forces. Australia has opposing parties. Australia has huge areas of resources for renewables. Australia also has huge resources for coal and oil and things like that. So there's a lot of activity going on in Australia. And of course, think local, think global, act local. We have to know what's going on globally in order really to know how to address the world. This is from PV Magazine International. And the title is Australia Targets 6 gigawatts of new renewables in the largest ever tender. The Australian government said a new National Capacity Investment Scheme tender process will open in May, seeking 6 gigawatts of new variable renewable energy projects. And of course, Tom comes in at this point and says, what is a gigawatt? A gigawatt is a bigawatt, baby, and this is 6 of them. To replace aging coal power generation in the national electricity market. Now, every time I come across this kind of story, in my mind, I think of how in June of 2022, NextEra Energy produced a presentation for its stockholders. NextEra is, by some metrics, the largest electricity utility in the United States. NextEra is not afraid of nuclear energy. I forget how many nuclear reactors they own, but it's either 6 or 7. They are the owners of Seabrook. And in that presentation, which as I recall is like 120 pages long or something, but it's a PDF file that could be used as a slideshow, and I believe was used as a slideshow. They talk about what they call near-firm solar and near-firm wind. And they define near-firm, saying it is firmed up enough with battery backup that it is at least as reliable as nuclear for generating capacity on demand for peak demand periods. And what that means is basically you could replace a nuclear power plant, a coal power plant, any kind of gas power plant with these renewable energy plants where you've got solar and battery or wind and battery or both and battery. And what they're doing in Australia in this is they are replacing, they don't have any nuclear power in Australia at all. The one political party is trying to get it in, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think nuclear power is just too expensive, and there are people in the political party that is trying to get it in who are saying, no, we can't do that. It is too expensive. So what they're doing here is they are replacing old coal power generating plants with new solar and battery or wind and battery or both and battery. And the result of that is that they're going to be getting electricity. They already are getting electricity that costs less than half as much as what comes out of a coal burning plant, probably a third of as much as what comes out of a new nuclear plant. So this is how things are developing internationally. Okay, the next picture we have is a picture of floating wind turbines. And this is from a publication called Offshore Wind. The title is Europe's First Commercial Scale Floating Offshore Wind Turbine Secures All Planning Approvals. And I did not do that without taking a breath. It's too long. Now, with onshore consent, Greenvolt Company has all its planning approvals and remains on track to be Europe's first floating offshore wind farm. Greenvolt will include up to 35 floating wind turbines, providing up to 560 megawatts of capacity. These are going to be big turbines. If 35 of them make 560 60 megawatts. They are big turbines, but they're floating. And you know, for anyone who is interested in why would you have a floating wind turbine, a wind turbine has to have a foundation, and the foundation has to be on the bottom of the ocean. But there's great wind resources where the bottom of the ocean is just too far down. So what they've done is they've developed these floating wind turbines. You can see in the picture, that's what you've got there. Those three things at the bottom of the wind turbine that look like they might be air tanks are air tanks. They are what keeps this thing afloat. And you can actually build the wind turbine on those floats, assemble it in a port, and then tow it out to sea to be connected and sighted and so forth. It's got an anchor. I would think multiple anchors to keep it in place. But, you know, it's a different technology. It does cost more than normal offshore wind power, and offshore wind power costs a lot more than onshore wind power. So this is not the end all of energy, but there it is. From floating wind turbines, what we can do now is go to an article in Energy Magazine that talks about a floating solar array. This is also in Australia. The title is Largest Floating Solar Array in Australia Switched On. The 350 kilowatt system at Gippsland Water has 644 solar panels and floats on a treatment lagoon at Druin Wastewater Treatment Plant. Gippsland Water said it is the largest floating solar array in Australia, and the solar panels result from its commitment to renewable energy. The idea of having floating solar is catching on all over the world, and you know, the fact that this would be the largest floating solar array, 360 kilowatts is not a small solar array. That would cover acres. And I would think it would cover acres. But since it's floating, that makes it, there are a bunch of things about floating that makes it easier. It might be that floating solar is cheaper, as a matter of fact, as I think about it, because you'd have to put these things up on some kind of mounts if they're on land. And yes, they're on mounts that float, but that might actually be cheaper. I don't know. Anyway, these things being in Australia, north is to the left. In the United States, north would be to the right, because the angle of the PVs is toward the sun at noon. Okay. We have a picture of work being done on a wind farm coming up next. And this is from DNV. DNV, by the way, is a Norwegian company, as I recall. And this is from a publication called Renews. We have stuff from Renews almost every broadcast. The title is China Faces Huge Energy Transition Challenge. And they're not kidding, by the way. I agree. This is what it is. It's a huge challenge. China is proving itself a global green energy leader, but it is expected to depend heavily on fossil fuels in 2050. DNV's Energy Transition Outlook China says the country's build-out of renewable energy is unrivaled, no doubt about that. But fossil fuels will still make up 40% of the energy mix in 2050. Well, that is, in my opinion, a problem, because we've got to get away from these things. And China's not been trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes on this. They've been saying that it's going to be 2060 before they can get away from fossil fuels. But the fact is, they are still today building new coal-burning power plants. And of course, gas-burning power plants. The United States is building gas-burning power plants, but it hasn't built any sizable coal-burning power plants for about 10 years. And it's not likely to in the future either. We are mining more coal, I believe, than we were in 2020. And the reason for that is because we're shipping it to other countries. But we during the years of 2017 through 2021, about a quarter to a third of all of the coal miners in the United States lost their jobs. And the reason for that was because the government of the United States was trying to push fracking. And the fracking was operating as a competition for coal. So a lot of coal miners lost their jobs during that period. Okay, we're up to a picture of a wind farm in South Africa. This is an interesting story. And the site here is IT Web, which is a South African site. The title is Renewables to Thank for Weeks of No Load Shedding. My bet is that there's plenty of people watching the show who have no idea what load shedding is. Let's read the synopsis and then I'll explain it. In the past 3 weeks, there has been no load shedding in South Africa. The good performance was due to deliberate plans by the government and the utility Eskom to deal with power outages. The Energy Action Plan is starting to bear fruit with the contribution of renewable energy projects. Okay, I'm gonna put this picture up so people can see it. A couple of wind turbines and cows, lots of cows. Basically what's happened in South Africa is this. South Africa has a couple of nuclear reactors, the only nuclear plant in Africa. And it's got coal burning power plants, but the demand has escalated to more than the supply could cover. So they've had to deal with that. And they had been going through a thing where the leadership in the political arena consisted of people who wanted new nuclear power plants and people who wanted new coal burning power plants and people who wanted renewable energy, and they simply couldn't agree. And so they did not develop much in the way of new power plants. And with the expanding demand, they got to a point where they simply could not supply everybody. And when that happened, they just shut off electricity to a large number of people. And they would leave the electricity off for a certain number of hours, and then they'd turn it back on again. And if they had to, they'd shut it off for another group of people. And they kind of went from one neighborhood to another, just shutting them off. Now, if you think about it, this is only going to happen at peak times, because in times when people aren't using electricity, it's not going to happen. So if you had an air conditioner, for example, it might run at night, but not during the day, because your electricity is off during the day. And as a matter of fact, when your air conditioning is not running, neither is your refrigerator. This is a problem, and it's a problem that they have had. In the last few years, certain organizations have put in large renewable energy sites. And the result of that is the load shedding has gone away. It went away because of renewables. Okay. Our next item is from ABC News, American Broadcast Company. And we have a picture of the Earth, planet Earth. And you can see that, in that in that planet Earth. North America is up, South America is down. Get a little bit of a hint of Antarctica. Not much going on for, you can see that Greenland is, white area near the top. Okay, this is from ABC News. And the title is Earth Day 2024 Report Card. Earth Day offers an annual opportunity for citizens, experts, and lawmakers to celebrate the planet, examine our impact on the changing environment, and demand a push toward a sustainable future. To make a united step forward, awareness of the mounting climate crisis is vital, one scientist told ABC News. And, this is just a statement about Earth Day, which is real enough. And so what they're doing with Earth Day is they're trying to use it to bring out problems that we've got. And we've got problems, and we have to deal with them. So that's where we are. Unfortunately, we've got people who are denying the problems and trying to get in the way of dealing with them. And one of the things that I found early on is if you saw two articles and one of them said solar power is too expensive and the other one said solar power is cheap, how do you know which is truthful? And part of the answer to that is, where does the money come from that supports these? And what I found was the ones that said solar power was too expensive 10 years ago were tied to, in some way or another, Rupert Murdoch or the Koch brothers and Koch industry or the big oil companies. And the other ones were they were all in agreement that solar power was coming along. The price was coming down, and they were politically kind of all over the map. How do you know who is telling the truth? Well, who's got a monetary stake in the truth, and who's got a monetary stake in denial of solar power and wind power being cheap. And this is something that the bottom line was kind of sussed out years ago, but there are still people who are trying to tell us that solar power is too expensive or it can't be used. And did they tell NextEra Energy when NextEra Energy figured out what near firm solar was? They might have, but NextEra did not have an effect on them. So anyway, we're up to Wednesday, April 24th, and we have a picture of two vehicles. They are delivery electric vehicles. One of them is a van by Mercedes-Benz, and the other is from a company called Ono. It's an electric cargo bike, the one on the right, which actually has a cab so that you can drive this thing around and not get rained on. This article is from Clean Technica. The title is Mercedes-Benz explores pairing e-Sprinter vans with e-cargo bikes for last mile deliveries. Okay, a pilot program uses special Mercedes-Benz e-Sprinter electric van as a mobile micro depot to bring standardized container modules to transfer points. A container is offloaded onto an Ono electric cargo bike, which is the thing on the right, three-wheeled bike. So it's a trike, I guess, which makes the last mile deliveries. So the van is actually kind of going from one point to another, delivering the containers that cargo bike is to the cargo bike, and the cargo bike is taking the containers around to the places where they're supposed to go. And there you have it. And now you know as much as I do. Okay, our next item is from Pace Today. The picture is a solar power solar array in Queensland, and if those solar panels look odd, it's because they're facing away from you, so you're seeing the back of them. So they are lighter in color than if you were seeing them from in front. The title here is Queensland passes legislation to deliver on renewable energy and jobs. The Queensland government has passed the transformation of Queensland energy grid into law, which they have stated will create over 100,000 new jobs in manufacturing, renewable energy generation, power transmission, and industries of the future. Now, I don't know what the population of Queensland is. Queensland is a state of respectable size. It's the largest of the states on the eastern seaboard of Australia, which includes all of the states in Australia except for South Australia and Western Australia. And Western Australia is about, I'm going to say, a third of the size of the entire country. South Australia is probably somewhat less than a half of that size, but it's larger than Queensland, as I recall. I might be wrong. Anyway, we've been talking before today about Queensland and the fact that it was changing the power grid and the transformation. They have been putting out requests for bids of all kinds. They have been doing this thing of trying to get everything set up to 80% renewable by 2035, and they've been making great progress. But here we're talking about a state that has a few million people in it, and they're going to have 100,000 jobs out of this whole thing. That's what they're saying. And that is a big deal, which is why we're getting back here. It's why this was just an ongoing story. And I want to point out also the Labor government, which is right now in control of the federal government in Australia, is very much pro-renewable. The Labor government put in the big battery in South Australia, and it also did a lot of work in South Australia building up a virtual power plant, I think it was a virtual power plant, depended on batteries and solar panels, and it involved 50,000 households, which is a huge number. And when the conservative government, the Liberals, took over in an election several years ago, the first thing that they wanted to do was shut down this virtual power plant, which is just starting. And when they looked at the monetary effect of that, what it would cost to shut it down versus what the monetary effect would be if it were kept open, and they talked to the utilities and they talked to various people, they decided not to shut it down. And the result of what happened after that was a huge change in the attitude of conservative people, members of the Liberal Party in South Australia, and their attitude toward renewable energy. And the result of that is that there is a sizable group of the Conservative Party, which is the Liberal Party, as opposed to Labor. And there's also a National Party, and there's independents, and there's a lot of weird stuff going on in Australia politically. But there is a growing number of people in the Liberal Party, which is the Conservative Party, who are backers of renewable energy. So that is something that has been going on. Now we're up to our last item, and this is a picture of a solar-powered log cabin in Alaska. And the article came from Anchorage Daily News. And the title is Alaska Groups Awarded $125 million for Solar Projects. Several Alaskan organizations are set to share in $125 million in federal funding so low-income and disadvantaged communities can be powered by solar projects. Awards are going to Alaska Energy Authority, the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, and a number of tribal solar projects. And yes, those white things all over the wall, there are in fact, I believe, skulls, although I don't know what they're skulls of. They're certainly not. They're large animals of some kind, but I don't see horns or antlers on them, so I don't know what they are. They're not bears, that's for sure. I would think that they're some kind of elk or something. I just don't know. Anyway, what this reminds me of is when I was in college, believe it or not, I was young at one time. This was almost 60 years ago, because I'm 77 now. So when I was in college, my friends, who by the way were conservative, would sit around with me and talk about renewable energy and how it was going to take over in the future. We had to get away from oil. They knew that. In those days, they didn't know about climate change, although I already knew a little bit about climate change in 1968 for various reasons. But one of the things I remember is they were talking about solar panels. They understood that wind energy could produce electricity all over the place. But solar panels, where were they going to be used? Obviously, they could be used in Arizona, Southern California, New Mexico, Texas, Florida. But they didn't, they were kind of iffy about how solar panels would work in a place like New England, or where we were at the time, which was New Jersey. The idea that solar panels would be used in a place like Alaska, probably not happen, because, if you're above the Arctic Circle, there's going to be lengthy times in the course of the year where there's no sunlight at all. And in the period approaching winter and coming away from the winter solstice, there would be lengthy times when solar energy was not very strong and there was very little of it. They didn't expect this, and there it is. So that's our last story. I will put up the last slide, which says, have an increasingly wonderful week. I have a feeling that some people will do that. And I will tell you that I'm waving goodbye. If Tom were here, he would wave goodbye. If he were home, he would wave goodbye. And who knows what his cat would do. So have a good week, having an increasingly wonderful week, and come back out next time. You hear? That's what Tom would say. Bye-bye.